It's been some time since I last came on this channel. But anyway, hello everyone, my name is FOCA and today I'm here to tell you a little story about time, robotics and ambition. So before we begin, I'd like to quickly thank our sponsors who made all of this possible and believed in what we were going to achieve. Also, we're not going to record this in the living room because we're still in the process of moving some things around. Now without further ado, let's get started. It's the beginning of summer 2023. By then, I already knew what I wanted to do going forward, even though to some that may have looked like only a child dream, because it was big. But to me, I only wanted to see what was the limit of a teenager with ambition and a couple of months of experience in electronics. And because of that, I chose one of the toughest or funniest, because I don't like saying that something is hard, projects that came to my mind at that time. And it was a humanoid robot. I had a friend who was really good at programming, and with me having a lot of hardware and soldering and assembly skills, I thought that we may complete each other. So here I am calling him. It was summer, we still didn't finish high school, but I asked him, so here's a project that I want to do, here are the tasks, I can do this, you can do that. Are you in? And to my surprise, he actually accepted. Now, to make a little note here, I talked with quite a bunch of people about our project before going to my colleague and telling him about it, and everyone, or not everyone, but most of them, didn't even take me seriously. Like, imagine someone with almost no experience or background even in robotics coming to you and saying, here's the plan, I have the 3D model, I need these components, now I need you to help me and we're going to achieve this. I mean, it sounds kind of weird and fun at the same time, but I think that their attitude was kind of understandable, because usually lack of experience is a huge risk and not many people are willing to take it. So going forward, it was still summer and I did not talk with my colleague for about 1 to 2 months. And the reason behind it was because I could not find any sponsor within 2 months. And because of it, I did not feel really good going and talking to him again. It was my responsibility to go and find the funds required for this project. He only had to do the code, and I did not do my part. Now, when saying I don't want to say that I searched for all the sponsors myself, because my family did a lot of work as well in trying to finance this project. But anyway, it was pretty much August, like the end of July, and we finally found a possible sponsor. And the very next day, when we heard the news, I went and contacted my colleague and told him, hey, so we did not speak in about 2 months. Here's all I've done, because in those 2 months, I actually modeled the entire robot and created most of the components list that we were going to need. So essentially, a good bunch of the work was already done. And so we hopped on a call, and he was kind of pleased to see everything and all the work that was already done. But I could still feel something was off. So we did make a small plan as of what we were going to do once we had those funds, but all of that time I had a weird feeling and I couldn't really tell what it was. After the call, we talked with the sponsor and scheduled a meeting on Monday, which was like 3 days after I talked with my colleague. And realizing that his parents needed to hear about our project as well, I tried calling him so that I could meet with his parents and explain them everything we were going to do before I went to the sponsor together with him to present our project. And so I called him and he did not respond. So I sent him a message and waited until like 7 p.m. It was at night when I tried calling him once again, and those were the 2 calls that were not answered. In that moment, I realized that my feeling when I last talked to him was right. And that was pretty much the ending of our collaboration, and from that moment I got him out of the participants list. He was no more in our team and it was all me by myself. So when the presentation time arrived, I went with my father and together with a small presentation document about the robot. I think I still have it around. And there it is. So the FOCA H1 PRE-ROBOCHALLENGE Humanoid. it's written in Romanian, but we went with an English version as well. We had chapters and everything that was going to be achieved with our schedule and what was going to be done essentially until the Robotics Championship, along with a view of the robot, which this is its back with the fans and the gearboxes and hands. We're going to talk about this a little bit later. This is its side and this is its front. So they don't look exactly the same. As you can see, in the initial model, we still had a LiDAR at the top. I planned to use the LiDAR, but it ended up being removed from the final version, along with fingers. But we're going to talk about this in more detail a little bit later. And seeing the schedule and the pictures, he was actually quite impressed of the work that I've done. And thankfully, in that day, we were able to secure the sponsorship of around 7,000 euros, including a 3D printer and the entire bill of materials that I presented to him at that time. Now, as I said in the beginning, investing in someone with little knowledge about robotics and electronics is risky. And that was the reason why, even though we got a sponsorship, it was still not enough. The entire cost of the robot was at around 10,000 to 11,000 euros in total. And that was all because I made a lot of changes going forward, and some of the items that I purchased were no longer used in the final version of the robot. Essentially wasted money. Or I 3D printed some models that got broken, or again, were not used in the final robot. Wasted money. And all of these resources could have actually covered the entire cost of the robot if only I had the knowledge that I have right now. Because if I were to create that robot, I would easily do it in around 8,000 to maximum 9,000 euros from scratch with the 3D printer that I have. But going past this overview of my mistakes, I think it's time to get in the sweet spot, and those are the months of work. Now, being all by myself, I was kind of fortunate to have the entire robot made in Blender. However, this was not as much of a blessing as I thought, because doing things in Blender is not as accurate. And I quickly understood that this project far exceeded Blender's capabilities and what it was made for. So, having to learn something new, I started searching for what the industry guys were doing their 3D models in, maybe with about 5 years of learning Blender and all of that knowledge going to trash. And then I stumbled across Fusion 360, which is a really useful program for doing pretty much anything CAD-based, and is really simple, so someone like me with, let's say, some background in 3D modeling was pretty quick to understand how to work with it. What this essentially meant was that from there on, I would no longer use Blender at all and only use Fusion 360, which was kind of damaging to me and my soul, because I kind of grew in a nice relationship with Blender and all the nice memories I had with it ever since my 3D artist days. But evolution required sacrifice, and without it, I would have never reached the level at which I am at right now. So the first month was completely dedicated to modeling the entire robot from scratch in Fusion 360 and working on the hand model, which was one of the biggest mistakes that I actually did in this entire project. When September started, I realized just how precious all the time I had was, especially because high school was about to start. Nonetheless, I started assembling most of the cycloidal gearboxes, mounting their encoders, doing torque tests, and also trying different configurations to see which one was best. This month proved to be the hardest because of the high school pressure, and also both of the cycloidal gearboxes and the hands were failing most of the stress tests. What essentially meant was that my gearboxes did not have enough torque and were not reliable at all. And the hands, whenever they would try to grip on something and come back, they would remain in this position and never go to their default position as us humans do. So they would be able to pick something, say an apple, but they would not be able to fully get their fingers at the default position. And to me personally, I would either ship a functional product or nothing at all. And once again, with great results requiring great sacrifices, I decided to quit working on the hands and focus only on the gearboxes. This decision proved to be crucial to our victory at the 2023 Robotics Championship, because not only I managed to get the reducers to a pretty decent torque with our configuration, but it also allowed me to assemble all 9 reducers in that entire month. And here in configuring and setting up all the motors, I would like to thank my friend Solomon from All-Drive Robotics, who was so kind and helpful at finding all of those little settings that really made the assembly reliable. I could feel the pressure of both high school and the project weighing down on my shoulders, but I knew that I was far from finishing it. And here it was also my father who suggested that we should get someone else in the team, because I was indeed going forward, I was in registering progress, but it was really slow. And if I would have gone at that same pace, I don't think we would have recorded any win at the contest. So the required abilities the robot had to perform were quite abundant at that time, and I saw the need for someone else to do the programming while I would assemble the robot. Well, at least I thought so. And therefore, I contacted one of my good friends, his name is Luca, and I asked him if he would like to join my team. And he was really kind. He didn't want to steal any of my intellectual work or anything that I did. But the reality is that without him, I wouldn't have registered any success. So again, thank you, Luca. And so he said yes, and we went all in to finish the robot. The very next day, he came to my home and he saw all the assemblies that were mostly ready. The cycloidal gearboxes were already assembled, and most of the 3D printed sub-assemblies were already ready as well. And now here comes the thing. We did not code almost anything in the first 2 weeks since he came, because we did not have an actual robot. What were we supposed to program? What are you going to code if you don't have the hardware? And that was a problem that I did not anticipate when I asked him to join me. Therefore, most of the work that we did together was actually assembling the robot, not programming it. And so with his help, I was able to quickly iterate between new versions of components, and almost as soon as we had them printed, we would go and assemble them. And it was at this moment I realized intelligence without character amounts to 0. Luca proved to be the help I needed, and he was there almost every single time I requested his assistance. However, even though we finished the robot together, when we got to the programming part, I realized that his experience was limited. And thereby, I had to go and do all the code, or most of the code myself. And it was divided within 2 main parts. Number 1, the Arduino code, and number 2, the laptop/Jetson Nano code. And I'm saying Jetson Nano because the robot was originally designed to work with a Jetson Nano Mini SBC. But because it was running Ubuntu 18.04 and some of the packages that we required in Python were not compatible with that version, I had to change the Jetson with a laptop, which was essentially my secondary laptop running Ubuntu 22.04 LTS with the newest packages and Python 3.10. Now, the Arduino code was the quickest to write. Having quite a bit of experience in C++ thanks to school having taught me from a very young age, writing the code for the Arduino was as simple as making headers for every single functionality and then combining them all in a main file. And that was it. Essentially, the Arduino was waiting for serial communication with the Jetson Nano/laptop, where it would receive specially formatted commands, which I wrote for every single functionality of the robot. Coming next was the Python part, where we would have the ChatGPT API, the object detection program, together with the TensorFlow Lite model for detecting the actual object, together with the serial communication and all other auxiliary functions that I wrote for the entire program. And as a fun fact, like 75% of the entire code for the robot was done within the 27th of October and the 3rd of November. I think it would be nice to note here that the programming was officially done on the 3rd when we arrived in Bucharest, and we stayed up until around 11 p.m. at night. Almost nobody was still there except for the organizers, who still had some things to prepare for the next days when the competition would officially begin. We arrived there at around 8 p.m. and we finished at around 11. So in 3 hours of staying there, I think I wrote like 20% of the entire code. 20% of all the code in 3 hours. Like, I just got there, put on my laptop on the table, and instantly started programming like there was no tomorrow. And I was kinda right, because there would be no tomorrow, as those were the last moments I had in order to complete my creation. Now that's not to say I finished all the work, because when I got there I still haven't finished my PowerPoint presentation, which should have been ready because the very next day I would have to present that PowerPoint to a jury along with the demonstration of working. And just like that, from 11:30 when we arrived in the room at our hotel, up until 2:30 a.m., I stayed to edit that live demo which we included in the PowerPoint, along with around a quarter of the overall PowerPoint. I woke up the next day at 9 a.m. and immediately went to finish the PowerPoint. And luckily, I finished it like around 11 a.m. when I packed most of my tools in and straight up dashed towards the competition area. Upon arrival, I was met by a lady from the organization team who was there specifically to tell us that it was time to present the projects. So I was just in time. And so we were guided to the presentation room. But for some reason, I thought I had 5 minutes to present everything, while in reality, there were only 3. And because of that, I had to shrink all the remaining content that I prepared to present in only a couple of seconds. And that was why the ending of the speech was really rushed. Even so, I accepted my mistake and I went back to the exhibition area. Now the jury came one by one at our stand in order to present them how the robot works, and I was really happy to see that they appreciated our work and kind of gave me a sense of hope that we may indeed have done something special and we may be awarded for it. Unlike in Orada, the results were not displayed on the website before the award ceremony. So we did not know whether we won something or we should just go home. But even so, we decided to stay there and see what was about to happen. And then the award ceremony started. I was there with Luca, my family, his family, my father who was still at the stand. We told him to guard the robot, and that was his job, just don't go away from the robot. But then, when the moment arrived, we heard the third place was not us, but rather a team from Constanza with some of the people which I knew. And then at the second place, we were called. And in that moment, I could really see all the working hours, all the working nights and days and minutes I spent on all of this being paid off. And even though it was not the first place as I imagined or I thought we may be able to get, it was still a prize at one of the biggest, if not the biggest, robotics competition in Europe. And considering the fact that the previous year I went there and I came back with a robot that was not functional and we were not able to even fight, we were at Humanoid Sumo back then, it was a huge achievement. In just a single year, to go from defeat to victory. You only get a single chance while you're still a kid to get the prize at the Freestyle Showcase Kids section. And I wanted to have a memory of myself and just remember that as a kid I actually tried to do something. Even though I may have not achieved an industrial grade invention or something that could be directly placed inside a factory, I wanted to know that I tried and I at least succeeded in creating something. And that is exactly what I did. And now, going forward, What happens next? Will there be another humanoid robot? Will there be a new photobioreactor? Or maybe I should try again with that humanoid sumo robot? Now, I can't really tell, but what I do know is that the unexpected always lends out the most beautiful results.
Puțin rapid.